Well, good evening. Welcome to New Tracks Meetup. Thanks so much for coming tonight. Hope you come back often. Hope you tell your friends to join us. We were supposed to have a bell and a whistle and some other sound effects tonight, but TC just didn't get it done again.
Well, I haven't got the mail yet.
So when he gets that, then we're going to be using some music from Howard Zane. We have two of his CDs that he has graciously allowed us to show and to run in our programs. And I thank Howard so much for doing that for us. So as soon as TC can get them and get them up, then we'll start using some of Howard's music on our shows. The train show is scheduled for January 16th and 17th. I hope everybody will put it on your calendar. If you'll go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, newtracksmodeling.com, and register, then you'll be sure to get invited by email to the show and not miss anything. I think you're really going to enjoy it, and hope you'll be able to join us. I'd like to turn now, we have a full show tonight, so I'd like to turn right quick to Paul Thompson for his quick tip of the evening. Paul?
Great, thank you, Jim. Dylan, can I get the first slide up? I've been working on my equipment basically during COVID, and as you can see here, I've basically added an airline to this boxcar. And the neat part about it is when I go to shows and run on Fremo, a solid airline is a bit of a tricky thing, and I've had a few get broken off, etc. So next slide, please, Dylan. As you can see, this airline that I put on is a little bit flexible. I can actually stretch it out. Next slide, please, Dylan. They're beautifully made rubber, solid rubber, and they're quite flexible. This is one of the screws that I had left over after I was trying on a couple of cars. Next slide, please, Dylan. I just simply glued it to the underside because this car is basically going on Fremo and will probably be handled quite a bit. And what I did is I used some of the glue, the weld bond, which maybe was a mistake, but it's permanent. And as you can see, it dries clear. And I thought I'd just give that little demonstration from my first one. And that's basically it. It's a nice flexible airline. And if you've got a car that you handle a lot, next slide, please, Dylan. These details come from High Tech Detail. High Tech Details, you can look them up on the internet. And the nice part about it is, I believe these are also available in O scale, several lengths, several different styles. And that's my tip for the night. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. You mentioned a company I've never heard of before. I think the parts that you just talked about are fantastic. Do they make a lot of other parts in rubber or just that one?
That's basically the ones they make in rubber, but they do have some other very interesting parts like window air conditioners in HO, dust bins, and diaphragms for passenger cars. And I should say in HO, the airlines are available in freight car and passenger car variations.
Well, thank you so very much. Nick, maybe we ought to add that company to a list of the companies that we'll consider for inviting to our next train show. Because okay. I've never heard of them before, and they sound like an interesting company.
Jim, I think they're part of PBL and run by Jim Booth.
Be great, thank you. Now I'd like to turn to Greg Cassidy for his segment about what's new. In other words, what the manufacturers are thinking about and going to produce for us in the near future. So Greg?
Thank you, Jim. Let me get my share screen started here and do it right. I'd like to welcome you to What's New, a monthly segment where manufacturers can spotlight their new products that are in development or being released. I'm always looking for new items and suggestions are always welcome. First, let's look at the Garden Trains Annual. White River Productions is pleased to announce the debut issue of their Garden Trains Annual. This new publication features 116 pages of exclusively large-scale and outdoor railroading layouts, projects, and information. There's something for everyone who enjoys large-scale trains, gardening, and the magical combination of the two. Editor Chris Lane, the guiding force behind the ON30 Annual and HON3 Annual, brings his passion for model railroading, especially narrow-gauge trains, along with his love for gardening and the great outdoors, to the pages of the Garden Trains Annual. A sampling of the debut issue articles include Bluetooth and Batteries, Next-Gen Train Control, The Making of the Model Accucraft Mason Bogie, Build a 2-foot flat car in 7/8 scale, Getting Started in Garden Live Steam, The Cat Shed Turntable, the Garden Gallery Photo Feature, and much more. Long a leader in the prototype railroading and hobby publishing field, White River is proud to add the Garden Trains Annual, specifically designed for the large scaler, to its magazines and its line of annual publications, the ON30 and HON3 Annuals, Passenger Train Annual, and Railroads Illustrated Annual. Large Scale continues to be an active modeling group in the hobby segment, and the new Garden Trains Annual will be the flagship publication for those active modelers. It retails for $24.95 plus shipping and handling, and is available through your local dealer, online at shop.whiteriverproductions.com, or by calling toll-free in the U.S. 877-787-2467. Next is ITLA. ITLA is releasing its new N-Scale All-State Machine Tool building kit, a fine-scale, super-detailed laser-cut wood kit capable of being built in multiple footprints. This N-Scale kit includes laser-etched scale brick surfaces on solid MDF wood with pilaster and cornice appliques in laserboard, precision laser-cut scale-sized window frames in 2 styles with pre-cut glazing, etched brick knockouts included for modeling closed-up windows, loading dock with distressed wood decking, shipping pallets and crates, and rear walls with additional entry and loading dock doors. Rooftop details include HVAC ducting, roof walkout, chimney, vertical stack, and 3D printed cyclone vents, ITLA rooftop water tank. Wall details include fire escapes with access ladders, ventilation fans with grill covers, electrical meters, junction boxes, gas meter, entry door security bars, color sign sheet with posters. ITLA modular design strategy enables this kit to be built in one of 12 footprints as shown. ITLA Scale Models Incorporated, where the city meets the railway. Their email is imaginethlaserart@gmail.com, or visit their website at www.itlascalemodels.com. Next up is Locofy. If setting up DCC for your new layout seems complicated, or you want to have something cool to run even on your existing DCC layout, or just plain go dead rail, then Locofy is for you. The Locofy 2, also known as DDLLHB, is a next-gen direct Wi-Fi sound decoder that measures 2 inches by 0.65 inches by 0.25 inches and is rated for 1 amp motor current. It can operate on a clean DC voltage that can range from 7 volts to 24 volts, making it ideal for battery operation. It can, however, run on DCC power too, if desired. Install the decoder into your favorite locomotive by soldering the 7 wires as per NMRA standards. Download the free app on your smartphone, currently available for Android and Fire OS platforms, and start running the trains. Internet connection or mobile service is not required except to download the app. To set up a large network of trains, a Wi-Fi router is required. The app is truly multi-train and multi-engineer, with each engineer in control of their own locomotives and aware of what locos are being operated by other engineers. Experience the slow, smooth prototypical operation with crisp onboard sound that is user customizable by simply copying the new sound files to the removable micro SD card. The sound files themselves are based on the open source standard WAV format and easily edited using the free third-party software Audacity. Easily customize scale speeds and run a full ops session with fellow engineers without any hassles. Locofy 2 utilizes the cutting-edge technology and truly takes model railroading to the next level. Contact Locofy at wifi-modelrailroad@gmail.com or their website www.wifi-modelrailroad.com. Next we have Carolina Craftsman kits. Just another mill kit from CCK, the mill at Reed, Maryland. A still working mill just north of Hagerstown, Maryland was the inspiration for this latest offering from CCK. Scheduled for shipping in early first quarter 2021, this release is limited to only 64 kits. The kit features craftsman-style construction, tissue windows and doors, custom laser-cut freight doors, concrete simulated storage bins, and northeastern scale strip wood and siding. At CCK, we strive to provide the best service in our industry and stand behind every item we sell. We hope you enjoy visiting our store and are pleased with every purchase you make. The mill at Reed, Maryland is shipping late January 2021. Check the website for details at www.carolinacraftsmankits.com. Up next, Evan Designs. Evan Designs and Dave Jameson introduced 2 new lighting effects for your model railroad. This miniature lightning circuit uses mega LEDs to create a realistic lightning effect. Just add your own clouds. In this custom small LED circuit, flash duration, flash timing, and flash brightness are all randomized, simulating the irregularity of lightning in nature. With this unique random pattern, the circuit will not loop or repeat. Connected to this custom circuit board are 2 Evan Designs cool white mega LEDs. The mega is our brightest LED available and will give you a wide range of brightness during the storm circuit for the brightest flashes in your lightning storm. Get this great Mars light simulator for your model train. We have designed it based on what the real trains do. We have this circuit ready to run on your power supply. Choose the 719 volt AC/DC DCC option for your train transformer or your non-regulated wall adapter. You can look at all of Evan Design's lighting products at www.evandesigns.com. Last, we have rail scale models. Rail scale models, your source for model railroad craftsman kits, laser cut detail components, custom scale structures, and laser cutting services. Here is the industrial system details kits in N scale. New from rail scale models comes another N scale offering. The wall-mounted exhaust system number 1 and number 2, and the wall-mounted dust cyclone system. Originally offered in HO scale, these industrial system detail kits are now also offered in N scale. Each kit includes 3D printed details and pipe fittings, round or rectangular styrene tube, and a set of assembly instructions. Each kit is flexible to be configured in a variety of ways to best fit the wall layout of your industrial building. Check them out at www.railscalemodels.com under the What's New tab. That's what's new for this month. I'm always looking for new products to spotlight. If you or someone you know has a new release, contact me at gcassidy2@verizon.net. Thank you.
Greg, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so very much for all the work you put in to get all the new products to our attention.
My pleasure, and I'm looking forward to doing it every month. Sorry for glitch in the middle. I was trying to answer a chat, and apparently it doesn't do both at the same time.
Well, I got kicked off the show for a while. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden the show was gone. So I don't know whether anybody else had that problem or not. But if you did, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened to it. I logged back in and didn't have a problem. So, Greg, thanks so much. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Other thing I'll mention, since White River is coming out, and Greg mentioned their new publication about the G-scale modelers, I sure would appreciate if anybody models G-scale or has a friend who models G-scale that might want to work with us to be able to get more G-scale modelers involved and on our show. I sure would appreciate knowing who you are and talking with you about that. I've been looking for an N-scale modeler for a while, and I finally found that person. But I have not found somebody that can help us with the G-scale market and modelers in G-scale. So if you have a friend or know somebody, please hope that you'll put them in contact with somebody, and we'd love to talk to them about helping us out. One of our first featured modeler tonight is Nick Santos of Nick's Trains. And Nick is going to do a soldering demonstration. He's been on our show before, and when he was on the last time, he was talking about how he was doing his soldering, and he had some questions that were asked to him. So we invited him back to talk to us a little bit more about his soldering techniques. So Nick, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I'll pick up the screen share and get going here, if I'm lucky. Have you people got the screen?
Yes.
Okay. We'll get it started here without noise. What I want to do tonight is show you the same thing over and over and over and over again. So if you get really bored and go to sleep, it's fine. If you're going to snore, put it on mute and we'll all be fine. This is essentially the soldering unit that I've used for years. I've done it. I've done a lot of different things with it. There are a few things that I'll show you tonight that I haven't done with the Weller. The nice thing about it is I run it down to about 4. And when I'm doing some fine soldering, this is one of my decoder buddies. The white wire from the power pack needs a place to go. And I just wasn't familiar with stay alive. Watch right there right now. See that right there? It just went totally to a liquid state, and the soldering joint is done. So the soldering joints that we're going to show you over and over and over again start with a little bit of flux. This I'm doing with just a 10 thousandths wire and a pin vise and a little bit of chip quick soldering flux. Won't solder all these, but I will just touch a little bit of solder to each one. The soldering, the flux, even though we're going to do a remelt here, just make sure that the joint is going to happen nicely. What I'm going to do is I've got the soldering iron warmed up now, and I'm going to take an 0603, a small SMD resistor in a pair of tweezers. I'm just going to make a puddle out of that piece of solder and set the resistor in it. And that was all it needs to hold it. Now I'm in good shape. I'll do the same thing for you again. Just take a resistor, make a puddle, and as soon as that's liquid, then I can flip that resistor down into the melted solder, and it'll hold it. Now I've got to get the other side. To do that, I'll turn the board around and go at it the same way, or quite similarly. Right now, the right-hand side of those resistors is a little bit tall. It's kind of up on the mound of solder. So what I'm going to have to do, I guess I'm going down through the whole row here tonight. Is just set those in, and you can see it happens pretty quickly. You can move around, move the resistor around a little bit. As soon as it's liquid and where I want it, the job is done. The heat goes away, and the solder comes right back into a solid state and will hold things. So you can see, for as small as those are, they're pretty easy to work with. The thing that's showing here also is when you're working with a printed circuit board, if you've got a soldering iron that's about the right temperature, you can really leave that heat on the pad for a while. On the other hand, you want to be really careful about what I just said. If your soldering iron is too hot, then that'll burn the pad. There are two things that'll lift a pad off the printed circuit board. One is acid flux, and the second thing is too much heat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to solder the other side. You can see I'm pushing down on the resistor, and it's just going down into the solder. That clicks in, and then I just relieve the strain on the back side with the soldering iron. Just reflow that back end. Really saw that one go down, and this one will really drop down in too, and then relieve the strain on the back side of the other end. Not that you'll ever have to do this, but it's just, it was a nice way to show that you can solder on printed circuit boards. You can solder really small parts, and it all turns out to be the same. In a couple of minutes, you'll see me doing very similar things with wires. When I first started getting the decoder buddies, my first set of 1,000 of the small connector boards, which you'll see in a second, were all wrong. So I had to order new parts, and then what I did was I built a jig to hold the parts so that I could solder them. Holding a part steady is almost as tough, if not tougher, than actually soldering the part. Getting it so it's in a condition that you can deal with it. So that's the small connector board. And it's just being held by this by one of the connectors. Sometimes they go on easy and sometimes they don't. There we go. Next thing that goes on is the connector itself. And you can see that would be sitting on that board just like it would on the decoder buddy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use solder this time. I'm going to warm the part up that I want to solder, and I'll just put a trace of solder on each one of those legs, and that's all there is to it. Just warm it up, get the solder in, let it flow, and get out of there. That's what I use is Chip Quick. It isn't cheap, and I've noticed on Amazon you can start to get it in the tubes. They have smaller tubes now. You can get 5 for an amount. I'm going to do this the way I don't like to do it, and then I'm going to do it the way I like to do it. This is something that's worked really well for me. Taking either that 10 thousandths wire in the pin vise or a toothpick or something, just to get a little bit of solder on the pad. This works really well for me in all cases. You don't need a lot of flux, just a little bit. I've seen people just dab on an awful lot of solder or an awful lot of flux, and you end up using a lot, and a lot of it will go away. In a second, I'll figure out which pads I want to tin and which pads I don't want to tin. After I get them tinned, the actual job of soldering them will be soldering the wires on will be quite easy. This is a way to do some soldering, just to take a little bit of solder and get it on the soldering iron, and then transfer it to the pad. I'm not awfully happy with that method. As you can see, I'm kind of fumbling with it. There's a little bit of solder, less solder, and then I go back and get some solder from the top joint and bring it over. And you know, it's a little bit tedious. If I'm into doing a lot of soldering pads, there's a better way. I'll show that to you in just a second, the way I really like to go. And just grabbing a little bit of solder from places where I think there's a little bit too much and bringing it over. Again, the temperature of that iron. People come back and say, Nick, your decoder buddy's pads are pulling up off the printed circuit board. And the reason for that is that the soldering, the tip, the soldering gun is too hot. This is the way I really like to put a little bit of solder onto the pads, just like I did the connector boards. And if this is all tinned up and ready to go, then the next step will be to get the wires that I want to attach to it. Get them trimmed to length. People ask me what kind of wire strippers I like, and I've had one set of wire strippers since I was in high school, and I just got a second pair recently, and they're just exactly the same. I've used them for 14 gauge wire, 12 gauge wire, and on the LEDs here, that's got to be 32, 34 gauge wire, maybe 36 gauge wire. I'm going to cut it to length. Just flush cutters, dikes, whatever. The cut isn't the big deal. The splice is the big deal. I'm going to measure them both the same length. And shortly I'll come in with the wire strippers. And you can see they're Kleins. They don't have to be named Klein. That, you know, Klein buys them from. I don't think Klein makes them. I bet they're made in China. I bet they're made away. And just to pull that piece of insulation away, you can use your fingernails. And this is silicone wire. It's a little bit tougher. I need just that little bit more mechanical strength to get the insulation off. Again, it'd be nice when you're soldering to have 3 arms and 3 sets of hands. But since I was only born with 2, any way I can get to hold the wire or keep it firm or solid is handy. Now you're saying, boy, he's doing that right on his desktop. I am, but that's a silicone pad, and that just works really well. I've had very good luck with the silicone pads. Desktops stay nice, and if I really need to push down and make a connection or make a joint or hold something, it's not going to cause any destruction to the work surface. This solder is fairly large diameter. It has flux in the middle of it, so I haven't tinned the end of that. I've had good luck with the rosin core solder. I like Kester, and I think I use 0.3 millimeter or 30 thousandths, the finest solder I can get on most of the time. Finest diameter solder. So now you can see I'm going to kind of struggle with this a little bit because I wasn't smart and didn't get it nailed down tight. Just get that solder to flow a little bit and it'll stay. Same thing here happens again. This is called reflow, and all I'm doing is taking the solder that's on the end of the wire and the solder that's on the pad, and just melting the two together. That's the only thing that's happening there. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for that to just go liquid. It's solid now, it's liquid. Take the heat away, let it go back and freeze, and those 2 joints are done. That's all there is to it. If I'm doing it for people out in the way, I might go in there with a Q-tip and a little bit of isopropanol, 71% IPA. If you can get, I saw some at Walmart today. Must be they're not using quite as much of it on a Q-tip, and that'll clean that flux off pretty nicely and easily. Try the other pair now. Those holes are handy. It helps me route wire through an installation. The tweezers were inexpensive. I got those from eBay out of China, and I got another pair of those, and they were a little bit less expensive, but they're very flimsy. This pair was a lot more sturdy than the first pair I got. So we'll go through the same game one more time again. First, we'll cut the wires to a good length. Next, we'll strip the wires. I'm trying to set that up so that you can see when you get that wire in that bird mouth there, it just bends a little bit. And when you see the bend, you pull it away and you get a good strip. It's a little bit too fine to feel. It's a visual thing. The red one might be easier to see. Decided to tin these. They're a little bit long to go on those pads. I can see that right now. It's probably why I decided to tin them. We'll just come in with a solder. I think this one is a pretty good demonstration of how that solder goes right up that piece of wire. Zip. If you want to pull the rest of it off, you can pull it off with your iron. Now I'll probably take a look at it and say something profound like, wow, that's too long. I'm going to have too much bare wire sticking around here. We'll see if this is the one that was or not. I don't want that insulation outside of the printed circuit board. So what I'll do is I'll just clip a little bit of the end off and measure it against the pad length. And then I'll fight with it because I didn't pin it down very hard. I'll get frustrated with it and hold the board down with a soldering iron. One thing I should have found is they have blue, what they call blue tack. That's very handy, and I put a little bit of blue tack under that, and just put the printed circuit board down on that blue tack. It would have held that printed circuit board a lot more stable. To spend this much time on it for a demonstration is about the last time I'll play that game. Now I'll unsolder this one by accident. Oh, nice going, Nick. So am I done in? Nope. That's not a problem electronically. We get a good joint there. Then we'll come back in. And this one that I untacked, as long as I get it on the right pad, it'll reflow and go back in. So that little mistake right there could also double as a thought or a way to recover from a mistake. If I put that wire on the wrong pad and saw it, then I'd be happy that I saw it and go in and resolder it again. Just put the soldering iron on it, take the wire away, and then reflow it to where it needed to be. Actually, that was a very nice demonstration of that was the one that I was thinking about and talking about. that I've taken 2 wires, twisted them together. On this particular locomotive, the front and the back wires from the trucks, I decided just to put them on one pad, combine them and put them on one pad. So that's what we're doing here. It's a fairly large wire to go on that pad, but again, just make it liquid, let it solidify, and job's done. Once you get a couple wires on it, stabilizes that a little bit. It's not such a moving target. Again, not very much wire hanging off here to get into trouble. While we're on motor wires, what I've done is I've just, I didn't tin that. I had plenty of solder there. I just fluxed the wire. The solder will flow up into the copper. And make a good joint. That's all there is to that. Not happy with that. I'll come back in again in a second and see all the distance right here. It's too much wire hanging around. As a matter of fact, way too much wire. Guess maybe what I'll do is I'll chop it off a little bit and come back in so that this distance here isn't showing an awful lot of bare wire. And again, you can see I'm soldering and resoldering and being particular about what I want it to look like and what I want it to be at the very end. The melt, the freeze, and the walk away. On speakers, JT speakers, we know JT. He says don't use flux on his speakers. I know there's a little bit of flux in that solder, but for the amount that I put on there, I think both of us would be comfortable. What we're going to want to do is reflow on these. We're going to want a fairly quick joint to happen here. There's a lot of mechanical stuff happening inside those speakers, and I just don't want to spend an awful lot of time with an awful lot of heat on those joints. So now I've got a tinned wire and a tinned connection. And all I'll do is just warm that up till that solder flows and make the joint. There, it's getting there. I don't want it too far toward the bottom, because that's a metal cap on the speaker. Just a little bit more solder for a little bit more mechanical strength, and that one will be done. Take a little bit of solder onto a tinned onto a fluxed wire. We'll do the same thing here on the other side. If anybody's wondering, that's a Weller. I guess they go about 70 bucks, and the tip I use is an ST7, Sierra Tango 7. It's the finest tip that they have, and I have it at about 4 on a scale of 5. There you can see some 14 gauge wire and that old pair of Klein wire strippers again. This is pretty tough wire. It's I used it throughout my layout. I got it at Home Depot. The price was right, and I had a little bit of stretch here, so we'll do up a joint like if you were going to use it for power bus for on your DCC on your DCC layout, or even a power bus for your DC layout. Wouldn't be a bad idea to go this heavy right out of the box in case you ever wanted to go over to DCC. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a joint to that would show. I could have cut that, but it's being lazy. What we're going to do is we're going to make a joint for a power feed up to the track. See if that bends just a little bit, then it'll peel off pretty easily. What I do is I give that a single wrap, maybe a wrap and a half. Pull that insulation back just a little bit, and that's mechanical. That would do it until that joint oxidized. I smartened up this time and got something to hold that wire with, so it's not going to go all over the place on me. And we'll put a little bit of flux on there. And ordinarily, I would have run that soldering iron with they have a flatter tip if I was going to be doing a lot of this, but I still got that fine tip on there, and it's still at 4. So there's not an awful lot of heat going in there, and that's good 14 gauge wire. So what we'll do is we'll start warming that up. Use just a little bit of solder in there to help the heat transfer into the copper. Once it starts heating up, I can start feeding the solder in. And now I think I'll probably go back and just make sure that that's all flowed nicely in there. It's all liquid and made a good joint. You could see it. You could see it go out. You'd see it go out through here a second ago. That it was liquid. It's a nice shiny joint, so that'll go forever. Now I was a little, not lazy, but a little bit lazy. This is stranded aluminum wire, I think, and I just offset my joints. There's nothing better than air for an insulator, and I don't have any kids, and I don't let my cat in the cellar, so she's not going to go out and rub those together. So those are the way I did feeders into the layout. Now, if I had a cup of coffee, I'd give it to you. Probably you aren't going to be doing this. That is an 0201 LED. I think it's 1.5 by 2.5 thousandths, and that's 40 gauge wire. And what I'm going to do is just cut to tin that. I stick it into molten solder. That's magnet wire. You can see the LED there. It has color coding here. So this is the positive side and this is the negative side. I'm going to hold it down. And this is going to look fairly familiar, other than it's just a different package and it's a little bit different size. There's the 10 thousandths wire this time with a little bit of flux on it. And I got to be honest with you, I had to buy a different soldering iron. I couldn't use the Weller on this one. But the game is just to get a good flow there. Maybe test your joint. Oh, that one didn't work. So what I'll do is I'll straighten that out, re-tin it, and go back in with a little bit more solder. If at first you don't succeed, flux is your friend and go in again. So I've grabbed just a little bit of flux, a little bit of solder on the end of that iron. The trick is to make my hand stable enough so that I can make this joint without pulling it apart on the go. And that's going to be a good joint. Bingo. There you go. So we'll turn it around and do the other side, and then we'll be done with this one. The first one of these took me about 6 hours. I've got it down to a little bit less than that now, but it's far from perfect. Again, jigging and positioning is 80% of the battle with soldering. One of the things that happened nicely as an accident for the decoder buddy was that I could solder the wires, all these wires and this wire. I'll show you how to solder the magnet wire to stranded copper here in a second, to the small connector board, and keep it away from the frame and keep myself under control so I wasn't rubbing the soldering iron on the styrene plastic. So essentially the tip of the wire was tinned, and the LED was bare, but that's gold surface, so it really takes the solder pretty well. Check it for strength, and off we go. Now, if you decide to get a hold of one of these, or you have magnet wire in general, what I have is a cup of molten solder, and I'll just take the magnet wire and dip it into the molten solder, and that will burn up the insulation. So a piece of LED wire. Never throw the small wires away from the LEDs or anything I'm working with. I've got a small box of wires that are pretty well pre-cut for me, and some of them are even pre-tinned. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tin the end of this wire. I think this one tins off pretty nicely too. Yep. See, it just by capillary action, it worked its way right up that wire. I'm going to take the magnet wire and just wrap it. And this is unstripped. It's just magnet wire, just right off the roll. I'm going to flux it, wrap it around that tinned wire, and the tinning made that stranded wire in my right hand nice and stiff. So I could pull this off. Now the only other thing I've got to do is that's been fluxed. I guess I'm going to flux it again. Pull some flux off my knuckle that I got on there. Come in with a soldering iron. I'm going to hold this one on for a second. And that's going to burn that insulation off that magnet wire. I'm going to cut off the end of that. Magnet wire, just to get it out of the way. Seeing and positioning and jigging is just takes longer than soldering, doesn't it? And now I've ended up with a nice firm and solid joint. What I could do is take cyanoacrylate, a little bit of super glue, or some of that black liquid insulator, and run it over that. Or it's a little bit fine for heat shrink. This is a piece of rail. This is the last thing I'm going to do for you. Something that you're probably going to have to do sooner or later. It's microengineering rail. I like to scrape some of that off, although you don't really have to. What I'll do is, and that's that same iron, and it's still at 4. I kind of kicked myself afterwards and said, "Well, why did you do that, Nick?" But you know something, it worked really well, and you can see after I finish up, we will have 2 ties and melt. So I'll take this piece of stiff wire. I like telco wire for my power drops. I can bend it. It'll stay in position when I put it on the bottom of the rail or the side of the rail. This is all tin, so now all I've got to do is reflow that solder on the joint. Can bend it to the shape that you want, so that you can drop that right down through a hole in the bottom of or the top of the layout, wherever you are. And that's all there is to that. Oh. Moved it too quickly, so I'll take it in again. Let it stay, let it cool. It's solid, and we got a good joint there. This one I didn't clean off in particular. I just used a little bit of solder. We used the same piece of yellow wire. I desoldered it, and I just turned the track over. His track is really good. If you're using Shinohara or Atlas or whoever else's track that hasn't been weathered, that'll take solder with flux equally as well. This will be a good joint. The trick of it is just to get it to just to get a good spot in there that's going to hold. And if I do it on this side here and this side here and turn that back against the wall, you'll never know there was a solder joint on this one. Then just reflow it. Excuse me, the focus on that could have been better, but I think you get the idea. It's nice and warm there. Hold on to it. hold it steady, let it solidify, and off you go. And I think the real coup on this, when I was using Dad's Weller gun, the one with a single light, or the two lights out in front, I melted quite a few ties, and this method works pretty well. What I'll do is just scrape the top of that off a little bit, so that to be sure I've got a good contact for a train going across, and that's a done deal. So that's about it. The only other thing you don't see here is the wet pad. You see the brass wool. You see the chip quick. You see the roll of, this is pretty solid, pretty thick solder, and the strippers, the flush cutters, and the end of the show. Questions? Oh, actually, I'll wait. We got one more person that wants to present too.
Nick, I thank you so very much. That was fantastic.
Boy, and I got most of the people awake tonight too.
Hey, how about you can't beat that?
You're a good audience.
To be fair, I think between this and YouTube, we've got what, 49 people right now?
Wow, that's good.
All right. Well, Nick, thank you so very much. We'll come back for questions a little bit later, but I want to give Charlie Rausch the time to talk about something that people have been asking me to have somebody on to talk about for some time. I did an article on computerization of model railroading, and people started talking to me about JMRI and all of these things, and raspberries and Arduinos, and my eyes glazed over, and I was ready to go to bed. And so I've been looking for somebody that could try to make sense out of this, at least for dummies like me. And Charlie, I think, is the guy that can help us with that. And Charlie, I can't thank you enough for being here this evening, and I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay. I'm going to open up my, well, what is that? Let's open up the PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. All right. What I'm going to talk about tonight is JMRI operation. Can everybody hear me?
We
Hello?
can hear you, but we can't see the slideshow.
I thought I hit the share button.
Did you get the menu that says share and what window?
Hold on a second. Oh, let me go back to the, let me go back here. Yeah, okay, here I am. Okay, so I'm going to hit the share. All right. And, oh, I see the windows. Now, I guess this is my PowerPoint JMRI. That's it.
Yay,
right.
we can see it.
Now you can see it? Good. So let's
hit play from the start.
Let me play it from the start here. There we go. Okay. Well, now we're going to talk about JMRI operations. Now, first of all, let's get to JMRI. JMRI stands for Java Model Railroad Interface. It's an open source set of programs that have been developed, and it links our trains to a computer using the Java software language, which is compatible to lots of personal computers and other kinds of computers. It started to be developed in the late 90s and early 2000s. And the first set of programs that they wanted to get to was a thing they called Decoder Pro, where Pro stands for programmer. And it was a way to program various manufacturers' decoders, both mobile decoders, stationary, and sound decoders, with standardized graphical panels based on each of the single manufacturers' decoders. So if you have a Digitrax decoder and it's a non-sound decoder, the panels are set up specifically for the Digitrax non-sound decoder. And the same thing goes if you're trying to program a tsunami. You have a set of interface, you have a set of panels that allow you to change all the CVs and all the different functions based upon what the tsunami panels are. And the same goes for TCS, ECU, ESU, and other decoders, NCE. And I got involved in that pretty early on because I was doing a lot of decoder installs, and I converted my layout from PFM sound to DCC. So my first introduction to JMRI was using Decoder Pro, and now it's the only way I go. It's very, very easy to use. It's very nice. And we can do a clinic another time on that. What is the other functions of JMRI? There's a thing called Operations Pro. Operations Pro generates switch lists and manifests for trains. Now, they don't have to be freight trains. They could be passenger trains and work trains, but I use it specifically for freight trains. This is the aspect we're going to cover tonight. The other areas of JMRI that I'm not going to cover are layout panel editor, where you can make panels of particular yards, or dispatcher panels, where you could even look and you can actually make a CTC kind of panel on JMRI. So you can have a dispatcher use the CTC panel and actually turn switches and track trains based upon what do we call those? Block detectors. You can also use cell phone throttles. JMRI will link your cell phone into your layout so you can use a cell phone for a throttle. Dispatcher panels, you can do signaling control, and you can do automation. Again, we're not touching that. We're trying to just talk about operations and switching and making up switch lists and manifests. So I don't play with cards, and I'm letting the computer generate my switch lists. So what the first thing you have to do is when you wanted to do this, you have to figure out what your railroad is. What's the route? Where is it going to go, and what do you expect it to do there? Okay, so here is a route of my railroad. I have a staging from where cars and trains start. Then the first town coming in from the staging is the town called Casa de Dio. It is an industrial area. It has a brewery, electrical supply place, team tracks, stock car repair, scrap metal dealer. The next town in is the division point, and it's called Durango. The main line runs east from Casa de Dio and the staging. There are 3 yard tracks there. There's an industrial spur that has a millwork, it has a general store, and it has a freight house. And then there's another spur for the coal tipple, where you get in coal and sand for the locomotives. Down the line, our next stop would be Dolores. It is a junction that has branches to both the logging and the coal mine. It has a grocery supply place, and it has an oil service dealer. After that is Placerville. It's the midpoint of the route, and it has a passing siding for east and west meets. It has a mill, and it has stock pens. After that is Rico, and Rico is a town that has the sawmill that gets fed by the lumber camp, and it has a supply location, Durham Supply, and a team track. And the next division point is called Ridgeway, and it has lots of places to drop and pick up cars. It has the Gramps Oil Depot, a feed supply, a grain elevator, yard tracks for empties. There's a separate spur for an ice house. There are also spurs for the LCL Freight House, a maintenance of way yard, and a coal tipple, and a stock yard. And the last is the most western position on the layout is called Montrose Staging, and it's off layout staging where all the westbound trains go. Now, the two staging locations really bring in cars from outside of the layout. So it's just, so the layout itself is not an island where all the cars are always sitting on the layout. No, the cars exit the layout either in Alamosa staging or in Montrose staging. So just like a real train. Now, you can also find that there's through cars where you have a car that gets positioned in Alamosa staging, goes onto a through freight and runs all the way through to Montrose. So it goes out and beyond. Now this is the theories, and you have to recognize what goes into that, the locations of the layout. Now, the trains that we have a daily westbound, daily eastbound, and here's the important trains. The westbound local freight, it starts in Durango and terminates in Ridgeway. We have an eastbound local freight, which starts in Ridgeway and terminates in Durango. And then we have another train 11, which is a westbound through freight, which starts in Alamosa staging and terminates in Montrose staging. Then the same, it's an eastbound through freight from Montrose to Alamosa. We can also have extra trains that I set up for taking cars and transferring cars straight from Durango to Alamosa and from Alamosa back. Then there's an oil extra because the Gramps Oil Depot is in Ridgeway, and oil trains can run from Ridgeway all the way into Alamosa staging. The same thing goes for stock extras and log trains, and there's a log trains that run, but we don't use the manifesting and the JMRI for the log trains, because the log trains are 2 log trains a day, 3 log cars. One leaves full from the logging camp, the other one leaves empty from the sawmill, and then they meet in Placerville and they go up and do their jobs. There's no moving of cars and there's no picking of industries. However, the logging camp can receive box cars and refrigerator cars from for groceries, for supplies, and the coal mine would get empty gondolas and we would pick up loaded coal cars. Their coal cars were all gondolas on my layout. So that's the basic train. So we have locations and we have basic trains. So and I want to take you through an actual process of, and let me show you the next slide. And the next slide will show you a switch list for the little number 3 local. Number 3 local starts in Durango and it goes to Ridgeway. It has to pick up 6 cars in Durango. It has no work in Dolores, but it has a scheduled pickup in Placerville. And then when it gets to Ridgeway, it's going to set out a gondola at a coal tipper. It's going to set out 2 reefers in the ice depot, etc. Now, what I'm going to show you is videos of the process of building, using this manifest or this switch list to build the train, put the train together, and make it run. Okay, the first thing I do is I'm in Durango. I have 6 cars. I have to locate those 6 cars in Durango. I have 3 yard tracks and a long industrial spur. So what I've done is that if I have more than 4 or 5 cars, I made these little tags with numbers on them, and they're sitting on a post in the front of the yard, and they're key tags, and I have them numbered 1 through whatever number 10. So I know I need 6, so I pull off 6. So I now look and find the cars in the yard. Here are the cars. We've got the first car is a gondola, and the next car, you can see this car number 5, the flat car. Next, a little bit further up on the next track is the number 6 car. The number is 3 car is in the industrial spur at the general, the freight house. Number 2 car is sitting at the grocery supply, and the number 4 car is sitting at the millwork. So we have, you see that long industrial spur has 3 cars in it, and there are 5 cars in total. 2 cars we can't touch. Well, we have to leave there. All right, so we have to move all 5 cars and assemble the train, and then replace the 2 cars that were not to be selected. So we'll go here. Now I have a switcher, and I'm going to show you this. This should work. Switcher's going to go in there, and he's going to pull out those 5 cars. What you are seeing is one of the new Bachmann 060s that I converted it from ON30 to ON3. The first step is that I decided that I'd like to pick up the cars 2, 3, and 4 from that industrial siding first, because that industrial siding is on the main line, and I want to keep the main line free from traffic. So we dropped off the first number 2 car on the main line, and now we're going to replace 4 of these cars. I have to tell you, I did both. I did the switching and the loco driving and the video at the same time. It was like juggling 3 plates. So, you know, if I overran the switch a little bit, or I missed the uncoupling ramp, you know, you're going to find that that's going to be an issue. Okay, now all of a sudden, car number 3 is visible. So we're now going to pull off car number 3 and stick it with car number 2. Okay, go ahead. It's a cute little switcher. I thought it was very cute looking. I don't ring the bell because it would drive you guys crazy for a half an hour, let me tell you. And this again is my fantasy railroad nut, guys, because Rio Grande Southern number 15 was I believe was a little 280, and I made this one 15. So we have cars now 2, 3, and 4, and we have to just put the other 2 back that we need, that we were not to be selected. So we left the 2 cars that we didn't want to select. We have cars 2, 3, and 4, and now we're going to bring in the cars 2, 3, and 4 into where the main yard lead is, and we free up the main line for any other train coming through. At this point, we've got 2, 3, and 4. Now let's go pick up car number 1, which is that gondola. And again, we have a boxcar that we don't need. We have to take the boxcar now and throw it back in the yard. And we have to pick up the last 2 cars, 5 and 6. It is very important that if you notice, I wanted to keep these cars in the sequence of the manifest. I found that it really helps because switching further down the line makes life very simple. If you have to hunt and peck for cars every time you come into a location, you're trying to block your cars so that they're correct for the switch list. This is the way the prototype railroads do it. And we try to do as little of shuffling down the line. We're trying to do all the shuffling here when we're building the train. Now we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 together. All right. Now, if you remember, the 6th car is on the 2nd track from the yard, and the 5th car is available on the first yard track. So I figured I'd grab the 6th car and stick it up against the 5th car and then tack on the caboose. If you notice, there is a Katy uncoupling ramp, and it's indicated where the pencil is. Makes my life a lot simpler. Now I can replace those unwanted cars. And the last thing is to get the caboose and put the whole train together. How are we doing for time? Okay, we're good. All right, the train is together, and now we have to get the road engine. The road engine is coming off, and we're going to attach it to the train. Then we're going to take each of the tags off off of the cars and check it against the manifest to make sure that the manifest and the cars and the train match up. And Jim, none of this is automated. This I'm running this just like an engineer and a brakeman and conductor. So, and I got that list in my hand, the manifest.
Gotcha. How much trouble was it to convert that Bachmann to ON3?
Grant Line made a conversion kit for the 260, and I stored away all those conversion kits. And so I converted their 2662, their 46460s. So I was able, that was the last of the conversion kits that I had. So I used that. It gave me the axles, the correct axles.
Yeah.
And it was otherwise easy. The hardest part on that conversion is the couplers. The couplers on ON30 sit way too low. And for all the ON3 cars that I have, they have a prescribed NMRA height. And so there's a lot of cutting and machining for the white metal coupler pockets to make sure that these things work. So that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's one of the downsides of ON30 that I see is that the couplers look funky.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just what, but I got into ON3 before there was ON30. And here's the train and is leaving Durango. It has no more tags on it. Everything was checked up, and the layout, the train was all correct to the manifest.
Yeah,
What I'm
and
trying to
30
do here by showing you all these things is that I wanted to give you an idea of what it takes to really build a train the way you do with a switch list, as opposed to the regular old card systems that people use. In the card systems, you would have taken all of those 5 cards out of the out of that industrial spur.
Did JMRI set the switch list up for you, or did you have to?
Oh, yeah, it did. Absolutely. I'm going to show you that now because we're done with this. I just wanted to, I wanted to get you a taste as to how you use this JMRI list. Now I can get back to that list to you. You want me to go back and I'll show you what that manifest looks like, or you want to go, should go ahead. All right. How does this happen is what I'm going to show you. JMRI, and I'm not going to go into how you get JMRI loaded down to your computers. There are YouTube videos on the internet that'll show you how to load it onto an Apple or onto a PC, and it'll show you all these things. Once you have JMRI loaded, then you have that screen available to you. All right. And so that is the original Panel Pro screen. And if you look at the top, it says Panel Pro, File, Edit, Train, Roster, Panels, Operations. And Operations is the menu that we're really interested in. And it has a little pull down menu. And remember I said to you, the first thing we have to do is define our railroad. So the settings, this is the setting for your railroad. It's a one-time setup. I'm not going to go through every one of these fields, but I'll tell you the important ones. The railroad name, and I named it My JMRI Railroad, and now I can't ever change it because there is no edit of this screen. So it's called My JMRI Railroad. It's an east-west railroad. It is ON3. I defined the maximum train length of 400 feet. Remember, I have 2 passing sidings for meets, and so I had to take that into consideration. I don't double head trains, so it has a 1 locomotive per train, a horsepower per ton. I don't know. I just came up and I said 1. Switch time per minute. My switch time is they are actually trying to build a timetable schedule for you. All right. And so I decided that for each car that has to be switched, it takes you 5 minutes to find the car, collect that car, and put the car on the train or take it off you. So I put a 5-minute time on that. The same thing, I put a 5-minute travel time between stations. My car types, I have a descriptive car type rather than AAR codes. In other words, boxcar is boxcar. instead of X, because boxcars in railroad terminology are just called X. My unit of length, we need unit of length because we're doing it in feet and inches. All right. And then you have other optional things. And the rest of those things are optional. I don't use them. The only thing I have is checked off is that add operations to the menu, to the main menu. When JMRI is downloaded first, operations is not on that main pull down menu. So you want to, when you set your railroad up, you have to hit that button there and so that you see the operations pull down. So, but that's it. This is a one-time setup. You do it and it's done. But now we're getting into the meat. The meat is the first thing you have to do is establish the locations. When I started this clinic, I first had gone into each of the different locations that we have on the layout. And I explained in Alamosa was staging, in Casa de Dio is spurs and stuff. So let's take a look at what any one of these locations. You have to add a location. And then once you add the location, in that location, you have spurs and yards, and it tells you what the length is. This is all information that you're going to get when you build your first location. So here's the location. It's Durango. This location is serviced by trains heading both east and west. We can get baggage cars, bulkhead flat cars, box cars, flats, maintenance of way cars, gasoline tankers, all of those cars can come. If you notice, I have the check mark, oil tankers are not there. The reason they're not there is that there's no reason for tank cars from Gramps to be left in that yard in Durango. The Gramps cars go directly from Ridgeway to Alamosa and from Alamosa back to Ridgeway. So yes, you can pick and choose the cars you want to have. Now, this very important is that the next part, if you notice, there's a thing they're called spurs and yards, classification and interchange track. And then there's staging that's screened out. I only use spurs and yards. And there's a reason I use spurs and yards. Spurs are where you have industries that either need cars or use cars. In other words, if you have my millwork, the millwork receives cars of raw lumber, not timber. I mean, just raw cut lumber. And they make windows and doors and paneling. When they're finished, they want to ship those cars. So they need box cars to be shipped out. Right? It uses a car. So what happens is that if a car if a car filled with raw lumber goes into Holtzman's millwork, when it's used up and the JMRI says to take that car out, it now becomes empty. So it is JMRI has with spurs converts whenever you are dropping a car at a spur location, an empty car eventually when it gets terminated, becomes a loaded car, or when a loaded car goes into that spot, when it gets terminated, it gets converted to an empty car. In a yard, none of that happens. If you drop a car in a yard track, a loaded car is a loaded car when it goes in and then when it goes out. So yards are used to when let's say you want to you have a car that's destined to go to Alamosa, and it's the local that picks it up, and so it drops the car in the yard, and then the next train, a through train that's headed towards Alamosa, wants to pick up, will pick up that car and send it. So I wanted to make sure you recognize the difference between spurs and yards. Now, in my spurs, there's the coal tipple, there's the Durango grocery store, there's the General Freight House, and the Holtzman's millwork. I'm going to show you an edit of what one of those looks like. This is Holtzman's millwork. Holtzman's millwork only boxcars and flat cars go there. All right. And it will accept any train or any cars from any train. No other car, and any car can be picked up. Don't ask me what operation schedule is. I'm playing with that. All right. Don't ask. It says track accepts all loads. Track accepts all roads. So that means I can send any boxcar, or JMRI will send any boxcar that's either loaded or empty to that location. It has a length of 70 feet. My boxcars are 30 feet long. So that means I can only put 2 in. It's very important, that length. So if you look at, let me go back one up. Okay, if you look at this, it says in Holtzman's millwork, the spur, the length is 70 feet, and used up, I have 2. And if you remember, when we were looking at that industrial spur, there were 2 cars parked at Holtzman's millwork. One car it selected, the other car said it has to stay. Okay. Now with Durango Yard, even though Durango Yard has 3 yard tracks, I have found that it's easier to just put the entire length of the yard in, regardless of which track. So it's not necessary for me to tell it where to put the car in the yard track, because the yard track is on a temporary track. Again, if you look at the Durango Yard, you can have any kind of car there. So anyhow, so you have to define each of the locations. Now let's talk about the next thing that you have to define. You have to define all your cars. And here's a list of all your cars. And this is a really interesting list, because you can look at this list in car number, in road number, in type, in color, in load, in kernel, and I'll explain kernel in a minute, in location, or even destination. When a car is selected for a train in a build, all right, you will see that there's a destination involved on the destination column. But the other column where it says its current location, you can see. So the tank car, the NCO, which is Nevada, California, Oregon tank car number 9, is in Casa de Dio team track. Car number 10 is a Connex tank, gas tank car. It's in Montrose staging, and it has been assigned to a train that eventually is going to go directly to Alamosa. So this is a through car. Okay. So if there's no destination, it means the car has not been assigned to a train. So how do you add a car? I'll show you what it looks like. This is how you add a car. In order to add a car or edit the car, you have to tell it the road name. You have to tell it the road number. These 2 things are really important. It's that little number that's with the road, with the road name abbreviation and the number of the car. That is the critical car identifier. You can't have 2 of the same car. You have to tell it what type it is, and feet. You got to tell it the length of the car. Now it has a thing called ounces and tons. Right now, I haven't played with this because there are some cars that are very light, which are plastic, and some cars which are basswood that are not weighed really very well. And then there are some brass cars. For an example, the flat cars are all brass, and they weigh a lot. All right. And right now, I'm limiting the train sizes. I understand that JMRI takes that into account and will not, if you have a limit on your train size, on your weight, the car won't be accepted in a train. Now, their optional things are the color, the load, and a kernel. And kernel is more for unit trains. If you have like three log cars that you want to keep together, you would give that a kernel name, and then it would recognize and keep those 3 cars or those 2 cars together. A good example of a kernel would be a wrecking crane and a boom car. You'd never separate the two. Okay. And there's other little information, but that is basically the important steps of your cars. Okay. We talked about the locations, we talked about the cars. Now we have to talk about the routes. A route is, you assign a train to a route. A route is, it goes from point A to point B to point C to point D, point E, etc. It's the sequence of events that where you go. Now you can skip a route. If you ever looked at my westbound local number 3, my westbound local number 3 does not stop in Rico because Rico's switches are all facing point for me. And so I decided that I'm going to handle Rico as with all the eastbound trains, because then they're trailing points. So now what does a route look like? This is what a route looks like. This is the little train that we were working with today. Its first location starts in Durango. It's a westbound train. It has pickups. Obviously, it has no set outs because it's starting here. I have a maximum length of 230 feet. And I know that there's a 4% grade between Durango and Dolores. Important. That's where the weight comes in. And this random, okay, what random is, this is a factor that it goes through and multiplies the pickups. And I say, of all the cars that are picked for Durango, I only want you to give me half of them. All right. If I would put 80 in there, it would gave me 80% of the cars that are picked for Durango. I wanted whatever the picking is, I wanted a random of 50%. Dolores is the next stop. And Dolores, I have, or the moves are the other one that is very important. I have no more than 6 moves. A move is pick up a car, set out a car. That's 2 moves. That's not the number of moves it takes to pick up a car. The number of what that move means, the number of pickups and the number of setouts. Placerville doesn't have a lot, so it has a maximum moves of 3, and yes, it is pickups, and yes, it is setouts. And Ridgeway there are no pickups because that's the end of the line, and yes, there's setouts. So that route, that's a route. So now we haven't built a train yet. We haven't assigned a train to that route. So that's the next step. The next step is to create our trains. From the create menu, or from the create trains menu, we have each of our trains. I gave you a list of the trains that we had, and I do that. I have the eastbound and westbound passenger train, and I have the each of the little extras. But if you notice, I do have westbound local 03, and it says westbound local 3, and it goes from Durango and terminates in Ridgeway, and it's currently in Durango. We picked 7 out of 9 cars. Now, if you remember that manifest, we picked 6 cars for that train, but in Placerville, it had to pick up a reefer. So by the time it's finished, it's 7 cars. It originally had selected 9 cars, but because of whatever the codes are, whatever restrictions we've come up with, it only chose 7 out of the 9. Now, the one just below that is the westbound Alamosa through Montrose, the westbound through train. There it chose 7 out of 12 cars. There's another train called ET12. ET12 was an eastbound through freight from Montrose staging to Alamosa. And that chose 11 of 13 cars. So when you get that, I have that manifest someplace to show you, because I want to terminate that one of those trains so you could see what that looks like. So this is where you sit and create a train. Now, the individual data for the train is here. So here, this is the individual panel to create the daily local. And the first important thing is that you notice when you add a train, it's the first thing it's going to ask you, what is its route? And once you have the route established for that train, you can't change it. The only way you get rid of that is that you have to delete the train and then recreate it if you don't like your route. But we knew the westbound local is going to make a number of stops. We've said Durango, Dolores, Placerville, and back down to Ridgeway. If you notice, it has all the cars. Now, if you sit there and you have a car not checked off here, when it tries to build that train, and your flat cars are not checked off here, what happens is that it will never give you a flat car. So you got to be careful of what you have checked off and not checked off. Now, I have not chosen to use any kind of locomotive. They have a routine in there where it can choose your locomotive the same way, random way, but because of the difference in weights of cars and the grades that I have, I decided I'm still playing that game by myself. I want to be in control of that. Same thing goes with cabooses, because I don't mind. There are a couple of light basswood craft kit cabooses that are very nice for pulling 6 and 7 car trains. But when I need something like a K37 or a K36 to pull an 11 car train, I couldn't care less if I have a brass caboose that weighs 4 times as much as the little Craftsman shorty caboose. So I'm choosing the caboose. And so that's the details of the train. Now, when we are finished with a train, let's say when WL03 reaches Ridgeway, all right, we're going to terminate that train. And in the termination process, it will then change the destinations and the location of all the cars. It will then update the counts in the cars, so that there's a count on the car list that tells you how many times this car has been moved, which is a very important feature when it does its randomization of selecting cars. And so this termination process is one of those processes that is important and required. There are other things that happen when you build a train. If you build a train and you see that you selected no cars for your train. So imagine if I decided I want to build my WL03. I hit WL03 and it says 0 cars selected. I want to find out why it only selected 0 cars. So I might have to look at what's in the yards. I would have to look at why this. So you can reset. You can reset a train and try again after moving a few cars or checking and see why you may have changed something in one of the little factors, the little CVs or variables in the various cars or trains or locations, and that might have screwed you up. And I did that because I found that I was not dropping cars off at the oil distributor in Dolores, and I found out that I had the tank cars could only be kerosene tanks, and my tank cars, I didn't have any kerosene tank cars. All I had was gasoline and oil. So I was not making any drops or pickups to this oil terminal in Dolores. So yeah, you can play with this and you can see that. Okay. Here is, again, this is that eastbound through train. Now, if you can take a look, this one is a lot more complicated. This is the one that had selected 11 of 13 cars. This says a lot of activity. This train would take a good hour and 15 minutes to build the train and to run it across the layout, as small as the layout is. So that's a really good example. And when I hear it, this is when the train completes, you have to mark its termination, and I explained that. Okay, how does it all work? Well, and I can't explain all of the little idiosyncrasies of this, but I'm just going to try to give you an overview. The route of the rail of the train is the driving force. Each location and each car is ordered in ascending sequence by the number of the previous activities. Remember I said to you that there's a count in the cars? So if you have a refrigerator car and it has a count of, it's been used 5 times, that they will always look at that car first, because your box cars may have had moves like 10 times or 12 times or 15 times. So the car with the least, so as you cycle through your layout, I have 60 cars on the layout. Okay, and as you cycle through the layout, it gets these cars and it really randomizes it totally based upon the this ascending order of activities count. So what happens is that the computer program looks at the route. All right, so it says, okay, I'm just going to start in Durango. I'm going to look at every car that's in Durango, and it says, okay, here's a car and here's its location. Now, can I send this car to Dolores? Can I send this car to Placerville? Can I send this car to Ridgeway? Because it knows that this is where it's going to go. And if it has no place to send it, it's not going to select it. Okay, and there are other limiting factors. Okay, if the car is a flat car, it's not going to send it to a place that says, I only want box cars or I only want stock cars. So it looks and examines all of those little aspects of it. And that once it decides that, yes, I can move this car to that location, do I have a spot for it? Is there enough room in the track so that if the track location has a maximum of 2 cars and there are 2 cars already there, I can't move that car. All right, so that's how that factor works. Okay, and there are things called scheduling, and I have yet to learn it. And where I want to put in scheduled pickups from the sawmill to the millwork place, or from the Gramps crude oil depot to the refinery in Alamosa. And I wonder how many, and you can set up a schedule as to which trains can pick up those cars. I have yet to learn it. It's a rather complex process. I've tried it a couple of times, and I got bills where I got no trains, where I got no cars in a train. So I have yet to learn it. But there's a lot of things that I have yet to learn. And so that's where I am with this. And I finished the slideshow. Now I can answer a question or two.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, Charlie, don't have a question, but this is what I've been looking for my own operation. I have used the card system, and I find it very clumsy, very slow, because you got to check each car out, or the card for each car. And here you have a list, and you can look at it and see everything at once, and it's only one sheet of paper usually. So yeah, thanks for the presentation. Very interesting to me.
Well, if you're into N scale, it's a little tougher, okay? Because what happens in N scale, it's really hard to read the cards, and we have tried this. I set this up at my friend's railroad, which is a rather big railroad. He's got a 60-foot yard with 10-yard tracks, and so we said, well, we're gonna set it up for 30 car trains. You can spend an hour and a half digging up cars, and digging cars out of the yard because it's just so hard to find them. In N scale, it would be impossible.
Yeah.
All right? So that's why I came up with the little tag thing, because I'm looking forward to going to my friend's house and with the tag thing, and then so we can just sit there in advance and drop the tags on the top of the cars and do it. So. Yeah, it is very interesting, and I truly enjoy it, and I have a couple of trains sitting out there, and I'm just I'll only run it. I may run the train, build the train in Durango, and run it to Dolores, and spend an hour doing that, and then they come back 3 days later and finish up the train. Okay, and the only danger is my grandsons come in and then they decide to have create a little chaos in the and they do that, but it does happen. As a kid growing up, I would sit at the top of the hill and watch the trains build the cars, and I loved seeing the things moving back and forth, and just what are they doing with all of these cars and why are they moving them? And this makes it very interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie, I have a question. This is Greg.
Yes, Greg.
I'm sure you didn't do it all at one time. It could have been over weeks, months, I don't know. But if you had to, for a layout, say of your size, enter all of the prerequisite information into it, such as the routes, destinations, locomotives, and cars and stuff, how long do you think that would take?
Well, it really isn't bad. It's very easy to do. My next door neighbor, my next door neighbor, I got involved into trains. He has a nice a 4x8 L-shaped layout with a 4x6 extension. Has room for. He's basically an industrial railroad where he has about 30 cars, and he put those 30 cars in a day, a couple of hours, and to do the locations, it's not how long it takes you to do it. It's what you're doing to make sure that you're doing it right. The barrel factory, the beer distributor, the coal, the power plant, coal cars and all that kind of stuff. Those are the things.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, that's the aspect that you have, and then you tweak it, because the first time you do it, you do it, and you're going to get selected one car on a 15-car select. What you wanted was 15 cars, and you got one car. Why'd you get one car? Well, you got to go through this process. But I would say. I would say if you know the data that you have, you could do 20 cars in an hour. You could do you can do all your locations in an hour if you're careful.
Okay,
there
thanks.
are some fabulous videos. There's some fabulous YouTube videos. There's a guy who does Grande Pacific. Has a real ongoing JMRI operations YouTube and a tutorial. He is really good, much larger layout. And my friend who has the large layout, we do like to do this, and we have successfully put in many cars. And I was saying 80 to 100 cars. And the way we started to do that is that we started to take all the boxcars, and all the local roads, and then all of the foreign roads, and we would do that. And then he would only use the cars that are not in the JMRI, and he kept the locations for the cars that we put in JMRI, he kept those in their locations. And then if he wanted to run trains, he would take the ones that were not loaded. And then as he got more and more time, he built it up. And I consider that if you take your terminal and you put your terminal in as the first location, and then you picked up all your spurs, you can just do your terminal with pickups and set outs. Take your train and just do a one shot and see what happens. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, Charlie, this is Murph.
Hey, Murph.
Question: can you download into JMRI from an existing, say, Excel spreadsheet? I've got spreadsheets with all of my data for car cards, and it's got everything you might want to know about each particular car, its size, its weight, its lading, where you send it when it's empty. Is there a way of downloading?
There is an import and export feature on JMRI. So yes, you can do that, and that could start your process, but you don't have your location on your card, on your location.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
so you'd have to go back and download the locations.
Mm-hmm. You do that on a car by car basis, and that's not a huge amount of data.
No, it really isn't. It's still better. I know the size of your layout, and it's about the size of my friend Ed Regan's layout, and about the same number of cars. And it was not intolerable. All right. And my suggestion, if you wanted to try it, is that you could just choose a series of boxcars, put them in, and then try it out and see what it looks like and see if you like it, and give it a shot.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Jim. Hey, Happy New Year, Jim.
Happy New Year to you as well, and everybody on this forum.
Great. Anybody else have any questions? Well, Nick, I've got one for you.
Okay.
You talked about something that I've never heard of before. Molten solder. So what do you mean by, do you have a pot of molded solder?
I do. It's a box that, as a matter of fact, if you wait a half a second, I'll bring it out for you.
Well, let's see here.
Gonna say the second's up by now.
Yeah, I know. He got lost. I just never heard of having a pot of molten solder. I'd love to see it. I've never heard of it.
That's the pot right there, and that's the solder in it. And I have an on-off switch, and I have a temperature controller. And it just sits there, and I just dip the wires into it.
You just you just melt the solder. You melt the solder in there, and then whenever you want, then you just turn the heat on, and it remelts it and sits there, right?
That's right.
Did you buy that or make it?
No. This is well, I think I got it off eBay. There's a couple different types. I got I think this one was about $35.
I've got a device like that that's made for hot glue. You just put a hot glue stick in it, and anytime you need a pool of hot glue, you turn it on.
Sure.
I've never heard of that either. Who makes it? Who makes it?
I'd have to go look on it to see the name. I bought it maybe 20 years ago, probably off eBay or Amazon or at a hobby shop. I don't remember.
Well, it shows you how current I am.
I think the people that have the hot glue pots are the same makers and the same models that have solder pots. They just change a word or two on it. Solder pots have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing through hole, you got a resistor. So you bend it and get it ready. You go, zoot, stick it in the 2 holes, hit it with the soldering gun, boom, you're done.
Yeah.
Because your solder just a little bit tends to lead, and you just go, you know, and in production and repair facilities, they're very common.
They may be, but for a hobbyist like me, I've never heard of them before.
Yeah, if I hadn't have done electronics professionally, I probably would never have heard of it either.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, electronics guru. I just repaired this or that.
Nick, as a hobbyist, how often do you use this? I mean,
As a hobbyist, I wouldn't use it at all, hardly. But
Okay.
as a person that's tinning the end of wires for those 0201 LEDs, I'll sit down and do 100 or 200 leads at a time.
I see. So it's something repetitive like that. It makes all the sense in the world. Yeah,
Sure.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got
Doing
you.
decoder installs.
Actually, Jim, to take that one step farther, I showed you how I would how I'd wrap that magnet wire around the other wire, and then put a little bit of flux on it and just heat it with the end of a soldering iron. And a lot of people, for just that single application, will just take a dollop of solder on the end of their soldering iron, and then just put the wire into that dollop of solder, and that's all you really need.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. All the sense in the world. I just never thought about it, never heard of it before. I just wondered how it was being used.
Thank you.
What is that magnet wire used for?
The magnet wire, I to be honest with you, I'm not fond of magnet wire. One, it's solid, and 2, it usually breaks right at the joint. So it does. It's terrible stuff. So what I'll do is I'll magnet wire is used in electronics a lot. It's wrapped around a core to make an electric motor, to make a generator, as you're coming down in size, to make a choke or an inductor, for
Transformer.
pardon me?
Yeah. It was originally designed for any time you're going to do an electromagnet.
Yeah,
Because you want the wires as close together as you can get them. And so instead of putting insulation on it, you just put enamel, paint. You just paint the wire and then wrap it around the core of a transformer or a choke, or around, like you take an Athearn rotor apart, you see all those little bitty wires wrapped around the armature. That's magnet wire.
Okay, but it's not usually for hobby stuff.
For hobby stuff, you're not going to use it until very recently, when people started doing the little surface mount LEDs. And use it there because the little bitty pads won't take anything bigger.
Okay.
And the insulation is stiff, so you get the little wire on there, and you're trying to use a regular wire. Even if you got it small enough, you have more insulation. The insulation is bigger than the LED. So you want as little as you can, because you don't want that stuff in your way later. Trying to make it fit in the smallest reason you do use it. Small. So,
Charlie, to get back to you a minute.
Yes.
I think I understand now about the use of JMRI for the operation, and it makes a lot of sense to me. The hard part, it seems to me, is figuring out on the front end what your railroad is all about. Once you've figured out what your railroad is all about and what its service is, then you're really just filling in the blanks for the JMRI switch list.
I can't put it any better than that. It's perfect. And that's really the hardest thing is what is it all about?
That's part of designing the railroad.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is so many of us, me included, when I started out for sure, I didn't think about what my railroad was for. I found a track plan I liked, and the trains had to go round in a circle because I was by myself operating, and I didn't want to have to, run them to the end of the wall and have them bounce off and run back the other way. So I had a round the circle layout. I didn't worry about what it was for. My enjoyment was frankly building it. And then if it ran, great, but I had the fun out of building it.
That's, I mean, we all get, the nice thing is that we get a lot of fun out of a lot of different things. Okay. That's what this great thing is about our hobby. I mean, I love building things. I mean, whether it's building a car, a locomotive, and whether I build it out of brass, out of plastic, or out of basswood. I mean, all of those things, building it is part of the action. And then the electronics is part of the action, because I've been playing around with the DCC decoders and putting those little magnets on. And I really enjoyed Nick's soldering things, yeah, that's the kind of stuff. So I like that aspect of it too. But see, I like the aspect of why is it there? See, and I mean, some layouts, if it just has a circle and has a couple of spurs on it, you sit there and you scratch your head and you wonder, how do how do you get to think about this as an operation? And a good example is my next door neighbor who decided he wanted to build a layout, a 4x8 layout for his grandkids, and because he had trains as a kid growing up. And so I got him involved in the trains, and he's got really involved. And so we took this little circular, oval with 3 switches, and then we added a 4 foot by 6 foot L-shaped corner of it, and we added all sorts of yard tracks. All right, and then we also added a yard coming off on another corner. And so I said, okay, here's a 2-track yard. Okay. The first track is staging coming in from the east, and the other track is staging going out to the west. And so we decided it had room for 4 cars. So we set that staging up. So we could actually, with JMRI, say we're going to run a train from A to B, and from the east-west staging to the west staging, and we'll pick up whatever 4 cars. And let's say he had 20 cars, so we put 20 cars on JMRI. We put those 2 tracks on JMRI, and we built a train, and it worked. So then we took and we said, okay, there's a pickle factory, there's a beer factory, there's a coal plant, there is a rock quarry. So we started adding cars to each of those. So his little east-west train starts by picking up whatever cars coming in from the east, from the staging track, runs it around the layout, around the corner, drops off in the yard. And so a simple 4x8 plus an extra extension turned into a railroad that you can actually do JMRI operations. So yeah, you can do it. And if you like to see switching of cars and going through the process, the mental gymnastics that you've got to do, move cars around, yeah, it's fun.
And what you're talking about is exactly what Andy Kenny talks about. When I talk to him about operation and so forth, it's exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about. And it's really turning your railroad, whatever size it is, into something that is a really functioning operating model of the real railroad.
Yes.
Regardless of size.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Jim. Jim can attest to that because he's seen that layout. Right, Jim? You've seen Kevin's layout. Oh, I can. He has his.
Yes, indeed. Okay, yeah, I've seen the layout, and it's it's just pretty amazing what you can do with it.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, it was very interesting. And he puts his 20 or 25 cars on the JMRI, and he can build. He actually did it with his grandkids to make a list up, and he said we have to move these cars here and there. So it's an interesting thing, and it works also for bigger railroads.
The interesting part that you talked about that maybe you haven't implemented yet, maybe you will in the future, is that you can determine the weight of each car. Which then automatically determines what kind of a locomotive or how many locomotives you're going to have to move that train, whatever that train is that the JMRI decides you're going to have to move.
Yeah, well, in HO, when you're playing with HO trains, the car weights are pretty standard. But let me tell you, in when you get up into O scale and into ON3, and you have a brass tank car. That brass tank car weighs about 5 or 6, basswood box cars. I mean, you should. There are a couple of tank cars that you can't imagine how heavy they are, and I have a couple of beautiful brass cabooses. So, and I'm reluctant to run them because one brass caboose weighs 8 times what the shorty caboose that I had on that little westbound local. So,
yeah. Well, I've seen people do operations on a little shelf layout. What's that one that the gumshoe?
Yeah, gum stump and snowshoe.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. The Chuck Younger layout was great layout.
Yeah, operations on that, and it doesn't go anywhere. There's no loops on it, and 3 switches or something like that.
Probably 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just quick and easy. But
well, you got to remember, it doesn't work. JMRI doesn't work if you build it like as if it was the Thomas the Tank Engine and it's the island of Sodor. Okay, what you need to have contact with the outside world, because that's the trick. Because you just don't want to move cars, or just it's like having a chessboard and you have all the same figures on it, and none of the figures leave.
Right.
It doesn't work. So, but by having the staging tracks. And staging, it doesn't have to be a barge. It doesn't have to be a circular staging with a helix or anything else. My staging tracks are 2 cardboard trays, okay, that sit underneath the layout. And one says Alamosa on it, and another one says Montrose on it. And in there is generally 10 to 12 cars. And they're just like, when I call for a through train, all of a sudden it's picking of the 10 cars that are in the Alamosa, it'll pick up 6 of those cars and add it to the train, and then we have those cars move around, and there is it adds another 4 or 5 cars at the end of the line. So it gives you that extra from the outside world. You got to have that outside world thing. It works.
Listen, I don't want to stop the conversation, but we've been on for about 2.5 hours now.
Yeah,
so some people may want to leave. And before you leave, I want to tell you about the next show coming up. Clark Cooning is going to be on for his Working with Clark segment. And Rick Steele, who owns LaBelle Woodworking Company, is going to be our featured modeler. Rick just bought another company. And he's one of the real go-getters, I believe, in the model industry right now. And I think you'll really enjoy what Rick has to tell us. So thank you so much for coming this evening. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And I hope you'll come back and join us again in the future. So thank you so very much.